Orange is the new black is where we dive in. Every episode we'll discuss, even the scenes that made us cuss. So follow me, join the spree. I try to space with 2 E's. Spoilers everywhere, so be warned. Super fans, please come on board. Susie's special line and all these ideas, because we make it everything truly as it is. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Oh, 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 oh. Yeah. Oh, 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 oh.
Hello, and welcome to Yadda Space. I'm Yadda, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a rewatch podcast for the Netflix TV show Orange is the New Black. But please keep in mind that this is a rewatch podcast. That means that there may be spoilers about things that happen in the future episodes, so please be warned. This is definitely a spoiler zone. On today's episode of our Orange is the New Black rewatch, we will be discussing Season 1, Episode 10, titled Bora Bora Bora. The IMDb episode synopsis says, Pennsatucky flaunts her new healing hands that Jesus has supposedly given her. The prison brings in a group of teenage troublemakers so that the inmates can scare them straight. Tricia returns from detox to find that she has lost her position on the kitchen staff and must still deal with Mendez breathing down her neck for her drug debts. Also in this episode, we get backstories from Tricia and Piper. We've actually already seen the director and head writer duo for this episode work together back on episode 5, The Chickening. And so again, we have Andrew McCarthy as the director and Nick Jones as the head writer for today's episode. Both of them are well known for their work on Orange, including some iconic episodes coming up. As I always say, I know that there's more than one person in a writer's room, so I'd like to give a shout out to the entire writing team. Thank you all for writing such a great show. You guys told the stories that weren't being told, and for that, we thank you. So again, the episode is Bora Bora Bora, episode 10. IMDb rates this episode at an 8.5, which is actually the highest episode rating that we have to date. So we should be in for a pretty good episode. At the end of this pod, I will give my personal episode rating, but I encourage you guys to go ahead and write your episode ratings in the comments as well so that we can get an idea of what we the people think is actually the rating on this episode. Okay, so let's get into it. When the episode first opens up, we have a close-up of Piper, and she's telling Nicky, I'm not gay. And Nicky's like, all right, I mean, whatever you say, I'm just telling you, I see a pattern. I see you coming in at breakfast time a little bit before Voss. It seems like you guys are staggering your arrivals, which sounds a little bit familiar to me. As she looks over at Morello and she's like, sounds familiar. They used to totally do that. But I have to give it to Piper. She's got a completely straight face saying, no, absolutely not. That's ridiculous. Me? No, never. So Nicky's like, all right, fine. I believe you, I guess. But if I'm wrong, then what's going on? Because I went by your cube this morning and you weren't there. Where were you then? That's when Piper looks up and she's like, where was I? And we cut to a scene of Alex between Piper's legs as Piper's saying, I'm coming, I'm coming. So yeah, that's where she was this morning. And probably many mornings since Piper and Alex reconnected in the chapel last episode. So then we return to Piper, Nicky, and Morello at the table, and Piper is saying, so yeah, I mean, I guess I'm spending a little bit of time with Alex, but it's not like that. Me and Alex are very old friends. We have an affectionate relationship. I need that, you know, I'm human. It's about comfort, which is valid, but that's not the case here, Piper. Y'all are more than friends. And Nicky clocks it. She's like, yeah, hey, Morello, remember when we used to comfort each other? To which Morello says, sure, you were very comfortable. I'm sure. That's when Alex joins the ladies at the table saying, oh, I just barely made breakfast. Nicky's like, oh, yeah? Long shower line? And Alex is like, yeah, it was actually pretty awful today. Nicky laughs and says, your hair's dry, as she walks away. Like, girl, you're not fooling anybody. Shower my ass. You and Piper been doing the vanilla and vanilla swirl. In the next scene, we are with Bennett and we have a close-up of his false leg as he's doing some push-ups. He's really getting those push-ups in when he gets a knock at the door. Somebody is banging on the door like crazy. And so when Bennett opens the door, Cesar just barges in saying, I can't believe people actually live up here, bro. Bennett's looking at him like, excuse me? And he's like, what the fuck is going on? When Cesar turns around and looks at Bennett, he notices his false leg for the first time and proceeds to call him RoboCop. That's a bit much, Cesar. Bennett tells him, I think you have the wrong house. As Cesar continues to poke Bennett about his leg, Bennett starts to get irritated and finally asks him, who are you? And Cesar says, I'm a friend of the family, bro. Cesar tells Bennett that when he found out what was going on between him and Daya, that he got really concerned because he loves those Diaz girls. But Cesar goes on and says, but I heard you were in the army, so I figure you must have some kind of honor code or something, right? You wouldn't just get a girl pregnant and forget about her, would you? Spoiler alert, unfortunately, yes, he would. That's when Bennett looks at Cesar and says, what? Because at this point, Bennett does not even know that Daya is pregnant. Cesar continues and he says, where are you going to put the crib, bro? And Bennett's like, what are you talking about? Cesar continues and says, I don't think this place is big enough. Maybe you should get a 2-bedroom for the kids. At that point, Bennett looks like he's finally starting to process and his face says, oh crap. Back at the prison, we're in the multi-purpose room with Piper and Alex and they're playing a card game, but there is a lot of sexual tension at this table. They're being very playful, very flirty, very touchy-feely. When their hands touch, they pause for a minute, and Piper says, it's weird how normal this feels. She tells Alex, I feel like I'm 23 and no time has passed. Alex tells her, well, I think when you have a connection with someone, it never really goes away. You snap back to being important to each other because you still are. And I believe that to be true. I've always said that if I've ever loved you, I still love you. Even if we never speak, just know in my heart, there's always still love. And for me, that goes for everyone. Exes, family, friends, everyone. If I've ever loved you, I still love you. From my first best friend who moved away after pre-K graduation, all the way to that one crazy ex, I still got love for all of y'all. Piper changes the subject with Alex and asks her if she thinks that it's odd that she hasn't heard from Larry since Thanksgiving. Piper's wondering if maybe he's mad at her because she wasn't able to see him, but she was in SHU, so wouldn't that be fucked up, you know? And Alex looks visibly annoyed, like, why are we talking about Larry? Why? I don't want to talk about him. Piper asks Alex if she thinks that Piper's a terrible person, and Alex says no. I think that we do what we need to do to survive, which I think is true in most cases. That's when Poussey and Cindy roll up on Piper saying, hey, what the hell do you think you're doing? Piper's like, nothing, a little bit scared. Poussey points at Alex and says very seriously, you, give me your shoes. And Alex is like, what? Cindy says, you deaf or something? Take off your motherfucking shoes. That's when Piper slams the table and stands up to the two of them saying, hey, back off, all right? Okay, Piper, stand up for your girl. Alex stands up behind her, backing her up like, yeah, don't mess with her. Poussey and Cindy say, oh, you about to step? And then they bust out laughing, cracking up at Piper. And Piper looks absolutely relieved as she and Alex sit back down. Cindy mocks Piper saying, hey, back off, and laughing at her saying, you so gangsta. Yeah, Piper does think that she's gangsta with an A, but we'll get there. That's when C.O. Bell comes in and says, all right, enough. Save it for the kids. And Piper's like, what's going on? Poussey explains, Scared Straight's coming today. Flocka comes walking in the room saying, I'ma scare us some bad kids. And Maritza follows behind her saying, I'm gonna make them shit their little delinquent panties. But C.O. Bell shuts all that down saying, hey, this is serious. These kids are going down a bad path. Your jobs are to deter them from making the same mistakes that you did. And Flocka's like, but we can make them cry, right? C.O. Bell says, yeah, you can make them cry. The girls are very excited. That's when Poussey says, oh yeah, I'm gonna make them cry, all right. Cry like they're going through a haunted house called life. I love that line. That's when Suzanne comes in the room saying, I thought you said this was an acting opportunity. C.O. Bell says, it is. And looks over at Piper asking, do you want to sign up? And Piper's like, no, I don't. I don't want to be a part of this. I want no part to this, thank you. Suzanne continues with C.O. Bell saying, other prisons get to do Shakespeare and shit. I want to play a role. Like, give me something to work with. She's very into the drama aspect of this. C.O. Bell eventually tells Suzanne, listen, I don't care. You can play whatever character you want as long as that character is the stuff of naughty brat's nightmares. To which Suzanne says, yeah, I can do that. In the next scene, we're in the kitchen with Red as she's preparing some food. Morello's talking to her as she carves a face into a cucumber. That's not very helpful. As Red is chopping, Morello is going on and on about how Christopher is the one who cooks and how he cooks such fancy, nice meals. But she's starting to annoy Red, who tells her, you know, you can go if you want. I have everything here under control. Please, leave. But Morello says, no, I like helping, as Mendez enters the kitchen saying, hello, ladies. Mendez asks Red if she has those ice cream bars that he asked for. Red ignores him, but he continues right on past her and into the freezer. Once he's in there, Morello says to Red, it's not ice cream, is it? And again, Red says nothing. That's when Tricia walks in the kitchen, and Morello runs over to her and gives her a great big hug, welcoming her back. When Tricia says hi to Red, Red looks over at her and then back down to her chopping, completely ignoring her. No response. Tricia lets that roll off her back and says to Red, you know, I'm clean now. To which Red says, so what do you want? A medal? A sticker that says great job? I have one rule. No drugs. You lied to my face. You're on your own. Tricia nods and says fine as she walks off. And so that brings us to Tricia's backstory, where we see her sitting on a street sidewalk next to a lady who's asking for change. It looks like they're homeless. Tricia looks over at the other girl and tells her, you're trying too hard. People only want to give you money if they feel like it's their idea. And as she's standing there not asking for change, someone walks by and does give her some change, proving Tricia exactly right. Tricia tells her friend to sit down and take a break. And when she sits down, Tricia hands her a little snack that apparently she stole from Whole Foods. She tells her friend because she's smooth like that. But Tricia doesn't think it's stealing because she plans to pay for it. She reaches into her bag and shows her friend her notebook, which has a whole log of everything that she's ever stolen. She tells her friend, when I leave this world, I ain't owing nobody nothing. Which, while I understand her intention, I don't think this was a very smart thing to do. This is basically a book full of evidence of everything that she's ever stolen. Itemized. Not great. Back at the prison, we see Miss Claudette in Sophia's chair. It looks like she's about to get her hair done. Miss Claudette eventually tells Sophia that she does have a friend coming, someone that she hasn't seen in a very long time. And when Miss Claudette tells Sophia that she hasn't seen him in 10 years, Sophia pauses and says, okay, I know what we're going to do, as she grabs some hair dye. It looks like she's going to rewind time on Sophia's hair and get rid of some of those grays. You know, make her look a little younger, closer to how she looked the last time he saw her. Elsewhere in the prison, Piper is at the phone banks talking to her brother Cal. Cal is telling Piper all about how Larry is going to be on Maury Kind's show on NPR next Sunday talking about long-distance relationships. He's telling Piper that that's probably why she hasn't heard from Larry. He's probably preparing for the show. But Piper is freaking out. She's like, he's going to do an interview about our relationship. What is he going to say? When Cal and Piper hang up, who walks out of Cal's trailer but Larry? Larry, what are you doing here? And why did Cal just lie to Piper? When Larry gets outside, Cal's like, you need to talk to Piper. And Neri adds, she wants to know why you're not picking up. She sounded pretty mad. And Larry's like, she's mad? Did you ask her why she went to the shoe? And Cal's like, no, that's none of my business. But Larry looks irritated. Apparently, that's why he's not answering Piper's calls. He looks like he's in his feelings because Piper and Alex were lesbianing together when they were dancing last episode. Back at the prison, we see Tricia walking up to Piper at the phone bank and she's asking her if she's got bad news. Piper says, I've got no news. I still can't get a hold of him, but apparently he's going to be on the radio talking about our relationship and how me being in prison affects him somehow. She seems very irritated at this entire concept. That's when Piper asks Tricia if she needs to use the phone, and she's like, no, I've had a hard time getting through to Mercy lately too. We haven't talked in a while. That's when Piper asks Tricia, how much longer are you in here for? And she says 4 left. I'm assuming 4 months? And if so, that's not a very long time, you know, in the grand scheme. So she's nearing the end of her time here. Tricia tells Piper, problems are problems. We all make bad choices. It's just some of us got different bad choices to make, which I think is true. That leads us to a Piper backstory scene. So it's Polly's wedding day and surprise, surprise, she's complaining. She's a bit nervous and she's spiraling, saying, why am I even getting married when I don't believe in marriage? And Piper's being a good friend, saying, you look beautiful. This is great. Piper goes on to ask, is it bad to admit that I'm even feeling a little bit jealous? But that's when Polly says, no, I love being the target of envy. That means I'm winning. What a peach, that Polly. Piper says, I can't even begin to imagine forever with somebody. And Polly's like, well, that's no surprise considering the kind of girls that you date, hot girls who make you crazy. That doesn't faze Piper at all. She's like, yeah, well, I like hot girls and I like hot boys. I like hot people. What can I say? I'm shallow. And Polly gives Piper a rare piece of good advice here. She tells her that you keep looking for people that you have that chemical thing with, but that's not the whole package. You have to find someone that you can spend 2 weeks in a cramped timeshare in Montauk in the rain and not want to kill. Polly tells Piper that when that happened to her and her guy, he made jigsaw puzzles fun and competitive. To which Piper says, that sounds truly boring. But honestly, unlikely voice of reason. Polly is right on that one. I know 20 years ago when my husband and I were taking our first little road trips and we would watch whatever commercial-filled movies were on hotel TV as we played chess and laughed and talked together. Yeah, that's the stuff. Those are the moments that build relationships, to be honest. And while it might sound boring, that's the foundation. You can't skip the foundation if you want it to last. Piper says she wants someone that she can have adventures with. Polly says adventure is just hardship with an inflated sense of self. I never thought about it like that, but I can see that. That's an interesting way to put it. Polly goes on to tell Piper, eventually you want someone you can curl up with, someone who knows when it's time to order Chinese. Back at the prison, we see Bennett waiting outside for Daya. When she comes out, he tells her that her counselor needs to see her and that she needs to come with him. She's like, what's going on? I have work. He says, your counselor says it's important, as he starts to walk off with her following behind him. They go off to their spot, their section of the yard where their cubby is, and Bennett tells Daya that Cesar came to his house. Bennett tells Daya that Cesar wanted to make sure that he had enough room for the crib, and Daya just says, my mom must have told him. To which Bennett says, well, when were you going to tell me? Is there a pill you can take? And Daya looks disappointed. She's like, I don't want to do that. Like, are you literally asking me to take an abortion pill right now? That's not what I'm trying to do. But Bennett says, you don't actually think you can have it, do you? I am a CO. I could go to jail as a sex offender. But Daya says, we can figure something out. That's when Aleda walks up saying, oh, good, you're here. It's about time we had a family discussion. Lord, I love Aleda. She's so unintentionally hilarious to me. Aleda tells Bennett that he needs to do the right thing. He has a good job. He probably gets some pension money for his leg. But that's when we find out that Bennett does not get any money for his leg. He did not lose his leg in battle. He actually lost his leg due to an infection from being in a dirty hot tub. But that's when Aleda says, you probably should just tell people that you lost it in the war. He's like, yeah, well, whatever. The thing is, I don't have any money. And she's like, well, you got 9 months. You better start saving, Papa. Jeez, what an awful way to find out you're going to have a baby. Elsewhere in the prison, we see Mendez calling over Tricia to tell her that he's got some good drugs coming in this month. Great. But Tricia tells him, I can't. I just got clean. Good for you, Tricia. But without missing a beat, Mendez says, oh, well, okay, then you can distribute. Tricia's like, I can't do that. I'm in enough trouble with Red as it is. But Mendez says, fuck Red, you owe me. And that line of you owe me, it seems to be a trigger for Tricia because she looks super flustered as she's processing and says, okay, well, how much do I owe you? Because as we know from her backstory, she takes her debts very seriously. So if she feels like she owes him, she has every intention of paying him back, no matter what it costs her. And spoiler alert, that's her tragic flaw. Mendez stuffs a bag full of drugs down Tricia's pants, and he tells her that once she gets rid of all of those, aka sells them to people in the prison, then they'll call it even. Then Mendez grabs Tricia by the neck as he menacingly whispers, the borrower is slave to the lender. That's from Proverbs right there. Saw it on a bumper sticker. So we're threatening people with Bible verses now? That's what we're doing? Okay. Nice guy, that Mendez. That Bible verse transitions us into the next scene where Tiffany is giving what looks like a sermon to a group of inmates. Piper walks up to Alex, who's standing in the doorway watching Tiffany as she's laying holy hands on the group of girls who are listening to her give her sermon. Alex says to Piper, have you seen this? She's faith healing now. Then we get to see Tiffany's healing hands work up close and personal. Tiffany's got both of her hands on Angie's face as she asks her if her headache is still there. And Angie's like, yeah, it's there, but it's not the worst headache I've ever had. It helped a little bit, but no, it's not gone. Janae is also in the room looking skeptically at Tiffany. That's when Tiffany again asks Angie, how about now? Is your headache gone? And Angie says, gone? Yeah, gone. Hallelujah, it's gone. Like, I think that's what you want to hear. So yeah, it's gone. Hallelujah. Amen. And Janae is looking on like, yeah, right. Piper says, why would anyone ever listen to her? And Alex is like, I don't know what you're talking about. She clearly has magic powers, being very sarcastic. Piper says, powers like what? The power of the snitch? What I wouldn't give to watch her slip and fall. Damn, Piper, you are literally plotting on Tiffany's downfall. Alex says, look at you all vindictive. Piper's like, she broke your glasses and locked you in a dryer. And Alex adds on, she also stole my mattress. I remember, I just have a different way of dealing with things. Alex then adds, I like seeing this old Piper temper though. But Piper says, I don't have a temper. I used to have a temper. Now I have a passion for justice. Okay, Piper, whatever you say, girl. So Tiffany continues preaching to her congregation when Janae interrupts from the back of the room saying, man, what the hell do you know about the Lord anyway? You ain't got no healing power. You ain't got shit. I'll tell you what, I got a fucked up knee. If you're so spiritual, come and show me what you got. Calling Tiffany out. But of course, Tiffany says, it don't work that way. Of course not, Tiffany. And Janae's like, I bet it don't, because you're just like the Wizard of Oz. Just a bunch of show and nothing behind the curtain. That's when Tiffany walks over to Janae saying, all right, fine. Listen, I never said I had any powers. I just do as the Lord tells me and it flows through me, okay? But Janae does not want to hear it. She goes, jibber, jibber, jabber, jabber. Lay hands, bitch. I think this might be one of my favorite Janae scenes. She is hilarious in this scene. So shout out to the actress who plays Janae, Vicky Judy. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I also like how Vicky's Caribbean accent comes out in this scene a little bit, especially that part where she says, you so spiritual. I can't even say it the way she says it because my Caribbean accent is not as good as hers. So shout out to you, Vicky. You really did your thing with this scene. Cracked me up. Probably my favorite Janae scene. So once Janae challenges Tiffany with her jibber, jibber, jabber, jabber, lay hands, bitch. Tiffany drops her Bible and drops down to lay hands on Janae's knee. She says that she's calling upon the Holy Spirit, and between the Holy Spirit and her, together as one, they're going to heal Janae's knees. Tiffany says, make this woman well. And Janae sits up in amazement, saying, holy shit, you did it. You actually did it. As Janae starts to stomp her leg on the ground, like, my knee feels great. Apparently, Tiffany's healing hands really do work. And Piper is looking on from the door in amazement as well, mouth wide open. That's when Leanne says, see, you're not like the Wizard of Oz. You're like the Wizard of God. Piper says to Alex, are you seeing this? And Alex says, yeah, she's really talented. But if you want to get to someone, you have to have a long game. As she turns and walks away. That brings us to another Piper backstory, where apparently it's the moment when Piper met Larry. She comes stumbling into the apartment, possibly drunk, and Larry's just sitting on the couch watching TV, wondering who the hell that is coming in the door. When Piper comes in the room, she's like, this is Polly and Pete's place, right? And Larry's like, yeah. So Piper says, are you a burglar? Like, who are you, man? But Larry is like, no, I'm Larry. I live next door. They just asked me to water their plants while they're on vacation. And because they have AC and cable, he decided he's going to hang out there instead of his place. Because, yeah, city living, I guess. That's when Piper introduces herself to Larry, saying that she's Polly's friend. And he's like, oh, are you supposed to be staying here or something? And Piper says, no, I have keys. I was just in the neighborhood. Piper tells Larry that she got bit by a dog and that she stopped here because she figured she should clean it or something. She shows him her ripped pants and the dog bite. And then she walks right past him, throws down her purse, and tells him that she's going to take off her pants now, explaining that she has to get to the dog bite since her jeans are too tight to roll up. So Larry runs off to go get all the first aid things that she needs, immediately caring for Piper. As she's cleaning up her dog bite, they start chit-chatting and finding out that they have some shared music interests. They both like the same band. And Larry's being charming. It looks like Piper's digging that. Eventually, Larry tells Piper that she should just go take a shower, get cleaned up, and she'll feel better. But just as she walks away, he asks her, "Are you hungry?" She's like, "What?" He continues and says, "I was just about to order some Chinese food, so if you haven't eaten." And Piper looks completely at peace, saying, "Yeah, Chinese sounds great." Probably recalling that conversation that she had with Polly on her wedding day, when Polly mentioned that sometimes you just want to be comfortable and be with a guy who knows when it's time to order Chinese. So it looks like that's what Piper's choosing here. Piper says, "Chinese sounds great. I'll have whatever you're having." Back at the prison, we're with Miss Claudette as she's approaching the visitation room, but C.O. Bell immediately tells her, no, they didn't call your name. You don't have a visitor. Just shutting her down. And Miss Claudette's like, can you please double check? When she uses the walkie-talkie to ask C.O. O'Neill if there's a visitor for Miss Claudette, he thinks it's a joke. He's like, ha ha ha, that joke's older than my Nana. But C.O. Bell is like, it's not a joke this time. Is there a visitor for her? And he's like, oh shit, yeah, there is. She's on the list. So C.O. Bell lets Miss Claudette in, where she finally gets to sit and visit with Baptiste. When she approaches him, he stands up and he says to her, "Am I allowed to touch you?" She says nothing. She just falls into him, giving him the biggest hug ever. And he hugs her back. Nobody interrupts them. I guess they figure she hasn't had a visitor in so long. Just give her time. Which, good. Good for her. Elsewhere in the prison, we join Morello, who's reading a travel magazine, as she asks Nicky, "What do you think about Bora Bora Bora?" Giving us our title for the episode. And Nicky says, "What? Don't you mean Bora Bora?" But Morello says, "No, I think there's 3 Boras." Then she begins to go on and on about how she's been thinking about going there for her honeymoon and how she knows that Christopher's got his mindset on Madrid, but she can't take all the enchiladas there because she gets gassy. Nicky, getting annoyed with all the Christopher talk, tells Morello, "I think this is a conversation you should be having with Christopher." To which Morello responds, "Yeah, but you've traveled." Nicky says, "Yeah, but not to Bora Bora," as Morello adds the last Bora, insisting that there are 3. That's when Nicky notices Tricia and asks her if she got through to Mercy yet, to which she says no. Once Tricia walks away, Morello tells Nicky that Tricia came by the kitchen earlier to give Red an olive. Nicky figures out that what Morello means is she gave Red an olive branch, trying to make good with Red since she's back. Morello says, either way, Red don't want nothing to do with her. But Nicky doesn't get it. She's like, but she turned herself in for Red. Because of Red, Tricia has more time on her sentence now. Morello says, yeah, well, she brought it on herself. I mean, she told Porn Stash about the trucks. That's when Nicky stops her and says, who told you that? Morello says, I think it's obvious. And I think it's disgusting after everything that Red's done for her. Nicky says, it's not true. But when Morello looks at Nicky, she rolls it back a little bit and says, I mean, you don't know. So watch it with the rumors, all right? That's when Morello says to Nicky, what's the matter with you? You still mad because we're not sleeping together? Aw, come on, Nichols. It's better this way. Us being friends. I miss it too sometimes, but I gotta stay true to Christopher. And that's when Nicky says, oh God, please, no more about fucking Christopher. Morello says, I can't cheat on him. Nicky says, yeah, I know, you can't cheat on him. And you want to know why? Because Christopher doesn't fucking exist. At least not in your life. Damn, Nicky. Spoiler alert. Knowing that Nicky's telling the truth here, it's really kind of cruel the way Nicky says that to Morello. Like, damn, because he doesn't fucking exist? Damn, that's rough. Nicky goes on telling Morello, he hasn't visited you since 3 weeks after you got here. Morello says that's not true, but Nicky says, yeah, it is. And everybody knows it. And the only reason that nobody says anything is because they're embarrassed for you. Because it's pathetic. But I'm sick of it. Just like I'm sick of you talking about things you don't know anything about. That's when Morello gets up, looks Nicky directly in her face and says, fuck you. To which Nicky says, hey, fuck you too. Morello walks out of Nicky's dorm area, flipping her the bird, as Nicky says, yeah, go do your make-believe somewhere else. I don't have patience for it anymore. Which, damn, knowing what we know about Morello's story, that scene hits hard. Nicky was really mean to Morello in that scene. And I love both of their characters individually and together, but damn, that was rough. Morello walks away. She walks past Tricia, who's looking over her debts journal, which leads us into her next flashback. In this flashback scene with Tricia, we see her getting out of someone's car, really drugged up, and as she's walking, she runs into her old friend from her last flashback scene. She looks good and healthy, and she's telling Tricia that she's got a new job working at a kitchen. Her friend asks her where she's staying now. That's when we find out that Tricia is still homeless, going from shelter to shelter, nowhere permanent yet. But she says she's living the dream. That's when her friend tells her that she's got a Section 8 apartment that she's staying in with her boyfriend these days. And Tricia's welcome to come by. Tricia doesn't like asking for favors, but her friend insists, "You're not asking, I'm offering." But Tricia's not trying to hear it. She walks off saying, "That's really great, but stop by the park sometime. Bring me some leftovers if you got them, but I'll see you around." What a bittersweet scene. On the one hand, it's nice to see that her friend is doing better and how one can make it out of being homeless, getting a permanent place to live, getting a job, rebuilding a life for yourself. But it's also, kind of bitter in seeing Tricia still not really able to make it and not even really willing to accept the help when offered. That's sad to see. Back at the prison, we're seeing a little bus pull up to the front full of the scared straight kids. A group of maybe 8 or 10 of them get off the bus as they're greeted by CO Bell and CO Bennett. CO Bell tells them, "Listen up. You are about to enter a federal correctional facility. You will be held to the same expectations as the inmates. That means no talking, no chewing gum, and no acting disrespectfully. Do you understand me? All right, let's go." And just as she turns to start to escort the girls into the prison, the bus driver stops her and says, "Wait, there's one more." He lowers the wheelchair ramp, and the last scared straight girl gets off the bus in her wheelchair. Kind of throwing the COs for a loop. Like, what did she do? Don't discriminate. Even though she's in a wheelchair, she might be a little delinquent teen too. Elsewhere in the prison, we see Tricia in the cafeteria and she's telling Nicky, "Listen, I know you're probably not supposed to be talking to me and everything, but could you do me a solid and tell Red that I'm going to make it right? We're going to be square. I'm going to figure something out." But as she walks off, Nicky realizes Tricia is high as a kite. And Nicky's like, Jesus Christ. Tricia walks out of the cafeteria, right past Mendez. Mendez continues to announce to the ladies that the scared straight kids are here, so it's time to put on a show. So as Poussey and Cindy get up excitedly to go meet the scared straight girls, Mendez quickly goes to catch up with Tricia. He grabs her by the arm and he says, "Hey, what the fuck do you think you're doing?" She's like, "I'm going to go see the kids. They said I could come." She wants to go see the scared straight kids. But Mendez says, "Really? You can barely keep your eyes open. It's my fault for trusting a stupid, junky, moron idiot." He opens up the storage closet, puts Tricia inside, and tells her, "You don't have to go to work. Just stay out of sight." And she's like, "Well, what am I supposed to do in here?" Mendez tells Tricia, "Take a nap," as he closes the door and locks it, leaving Tricia inside. Spoiler alert, I think those are his last words to her. In which case, how awful is that? He called her a stupid fucking junkie moron idiot, and then he told her to take a nap. And knowing what we know happens to Tricia, how heartbreaking is that? What an asshole. That leads us to another Tricia backstory. In the flashback, Tricia is in a clothing store and she's trying to pay the cashier for things that she has stolen in the past. But he's rightfully confused. Like, what are you talking about? You're paying for things now, but you're not taking anything with you, but you took them before. What are you talking about, girl? Tricia tells him that she's trying to pay for some headphones, but he's telling her, "We don't even sell those." Tricia tells him, "Yeah, but you did 2 years ago, and I borrowed them back then, but now I'm trying to pay for them." So basically, you just told him that you stole those 2 years ago. Not good, girl. I get what your intent is, but this is not good. She tells him, "I want to settle my debt." But as soon as he goes off to get the manager, Tricia starts looking at a display of necklaces and decides to swipe one for herself. Girl, how are you stealing while you're trying to pay off your debt? Make that make sense. When the manager comes up to Tricia, he tells her, "I told you not to come in here anymore." But Tricia insists, "I'm just trying to pay my debt, yo." I gotta throw that yo in because Tricia uses yo a lot. And even though I'm not saying it, I feel like it's authentic to her character. I should be saying it. Tricia's like, "I need to settle my debts, yo." The manager asks Tricia to just go before he has to call the cops. But when he says that, the lady behind Tricia tells him, "I saw her take a necklace today." And Tricia's like, "Yeah, but I'm going to pay for that later, First things first." Tricia pulls out a 20 and she's like, "Hey, let me just give you $20. Let's call it even." She puts it down on the counter and starts to walk out of the store. But as soon as she gets outside, she's face to face with a cop. And he's like, hey, what are you doing? And Tricia's like, nothing, as she runs off in the opposite direction. When the store manager comes outside, the cop asks him, did she steal something? And the manager, rightfully confused, is like, I'm not sure. So the cop goes running after her. I think we're left to assume that that's what landed Tricia in prison in the first place. Some petty theft, a necklace that didn't even cost $20, landed her in prison and down the path that she goes down, which is really unfortunate. Back at the prison, we see C.O. Bell leading the group of scared straight girls through the prison. They have them all changed into their orange outfits so they fit right in. They walk the girls into the multi-purpose room where Poussey, Cindy, Suzanne, Maritza, and Flocka are all sitting there waiting for them. C.O. Bell says to them, inmates, say hello. Which must have been the code word because our girls run over to the scared straight girls like they are ready to attack them. They don't touch them, but they get in their faces and just start yelling at them, trying to intimidate them. If you ever watched junk food talk shows back in the 90s on Maury, they used to always have the scared straight kids on, and they would have usually a drill sergeant or something yelling at them in their faces, breaking them down, trying to deter them from a life of crime. And that's basically what the Litchfield ladies are here to do today. Cindy is all up in this girl's face asking her, what's your name? What's your fucking name? And Suzanne is in another girl's face asking her, you want to see some Shakespeare shit? Which I think is scary in itself, the way Suzanne is saying it. Maritza is in another girl's face saying, what the fuck you smiling for? What are you, some kind of clown? Which is kind of funny coming from Maritza because we have never seen her be this rough, but here we are. Apparently, she can turn up. Poussey is also yelling in a girl's face saying, what the fuck you smiling for? You think this a joke? Do I look like a fucking joke to you? Which again, we haven't really seen Poussey be hard like this either, but she can turn up as well. When Flocka yells at a girl to speak up, and she does, finally saying that her name is Rebecca, Cindy goes, oh, you trying to cop a fucking attitude with me now? Like, damn, these girls cannot win. The girl's like, I'm sorry, you told me to speak up. Cindy says, don't fucking play with me. And Flocka backs her up saying, don't play with her. I find it really cute to see them here together as this duo because, spoiler alert, we know in later seasons that they become a duo on the radio show, so it's kind of fun to see the beginnings of Flocka and Tova over here. Eventually, C.O. Bell realizes that while the Litchfield ladies are doing a good job intimidating most of the scared straight girls, nobody is talking to the girl in the wheelchair. So she comes over to Poussey and asks her to go talk to the girl in the wheelchair. Poussey is like, no. Like, what am I supposed to say to her? But eventually she goes down there and she says to the girl in the wheelchair, so what's up? You think you all tough because you in a wheelchair and shit? And the girl's just like, no. So Poussey continues and tries again. She's like, well, you know what I'm saying? There ain't no wheelchair ramps in prison, right? Ain't nobody gonna be holding no doors open for you and shit up in here. But the girl says, I don't need nobody to open doors for me. I can do anything anybody else can do. And Poussey is taken aback. She's like, oh, my bad. That's cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, more power to you. The girl in the wheelchair continues and says, they told me I couldn't rob a liquor store because I'm a roller, but I showed them. Girl, is that what you wanted to show them? I think you're fighting the wrong battles here. Poussey says, all right. Well, you know, that's not something that you need to prove to everybody. Word. I don't know if that's the flex, but okay. The girl in the wheelchair continues and says, they told me I couldn't gangbang, and now I got my own gang. Poussey says, of handicapped people? Yo, listen, that's not, you just gonna make things harder for yourself, man. How many of y'all is it? Do y'all just roll up on people? Like, how does that work? Poussey is really trying to figure out the logistics of this. As C.O. Bell watches the ladies try to scare these girls straight, she says, this isn't enough. We are not helping these kids enough. C.O. Bell asks C.O. Bennett, where's Tricia? I requested her. It would be good for them to be scared by someone their own age. Go find her. So Bennett goes off to find Tricia, who we know is in the storage closet that Mendez locked her in. That scene cuts and we're in the TV room with Tiffany as she's laying hands on people, telling them to receive the Lord, healing them. Mendez is watching Tiffany just completely entertained when Bennett walks up to him. Mendez tells Bennett how he wishes that they could put this shit on YouTube. And Bennett's like, yeah, whatever. Anyways, have you seen Tricia? Mendez tries to play stupid like, oh, Miller? No, why? Why are you asking about her? Bennett says, well, she was supposed to be on the tour and she's not there, so I guess I'll radio in. You know, letting the rest of the guards know that somebody's missing. But Mendez tells him, no, don't do that. You know what? As a matter of fact, I did see her. Yep. She just stepped off to go to the bathroom, actually. You know, when I see her again, I'll send her your way as soon as she comes back. Bennett is cool with that. And I'm just like, you didn't think that was suspicious? But I guess maybe they don't get paid enough to think it was suspicious. I don't know. But he rolls with it and says, okay, cool, and walks off. Elsewhere in the prison, CO Bell is bringing the scared straight girls into the bathroom, you know, to show them the showers and the conditions in there. Not a great place to be. That's when Piper walks in, and Poussey tries to get her in on the scared straight game, you know, trying to get her to say something to scare the teens. But Piper's not picking up what they're putting down. CO Bell says, tell them what happens when you drop a bar of soap in prison. But Piper says, you know, I don't really think that stereotype applies here. Which, true. I don't think so. It doesn't quite work the same. Eventually, the girl in the wheelchair says, man, this place is a joke. You all are just putting on a show. Poussey says, yo, keep laughing, little kid. You'll shut up real quick once Chapman gets you. And Piper's looking like, what, me? What the heck am I going to do to her? Cindy continues and says, that's right. Chapman is a stone cold lesbian and she'll put you through your paces. When that scene cuts, we're with Mendez as he's opening up the storage room door and finds Tricia slumped and sitting on the floor. Once Mendez gets in there, he closes the door behind him, looks down at Tricia and says, all right, shit stain, up and at him. He kicks her knee to wake her up and she slumps over onto the floor, lifeless. Tricia's dead. Mendez is like, what the fuck? He checks for a pulse. He sits her up, but she's not waking up. Tricia is gone. Behind her, he notices the empty bag of drugs and realizes what happened. She overdosed on his supply. If you ask me, he's responsible for this death. Once Mendez realizes that Tricia's really gone, he starts to panic in the storage room, probably trying to figure out what the hell he's going to do. How to spin this. Back in the bathroom with the scared straight girls, Poussey is pointing out to the girls that there are no doors on the bathroom stalls. When you have to use the bathroom, everybody sees. Flocka chimes in with, even if it's number 2. Cindy says, 1, 2, 3. It don't matter in prison. The girl in the wheelchair says, I don't care. So finally, CO Bell says, all right, I've had enough of this. You think this is a joke, do you? How about you spend the night here? Just you and Chapman. But the girl in the wheelchair says, whatever. Poussey and CO Bell mock her like, oh, whatever. No big deal, whatever. Okay, let's go. CO Bell begins to escort the scared straight girls out of the bathroom, but stops the girl in the wheelchair, telling her, not you, and instead tells her that she has to stay there with Chapman. Once everyone else leaves, the girl in the wheelchair says to Piper, so what, now's the part where you try to scare me? Piper says, listen, I don't want to scare you, but trust me, you don't want to be in here, as she touches the girl in the wheelchair on her shoulder. Once Piper touches her, though, the girl says, ew, don't touch me, dyke faggot bitch. Which, again, these are words that I do not agree with. They are hurtful, and I only use them because it's literally what was said. I don't agree with the use of these words at all. But off my soapbox and back to the show. After the girl in the wheelchair calls Piper out of her name, Piper gets real serious, walks in front of the girl and says, excuse me? The girl says, you heard me. Piper asks for her name, and that's when we find out that the girl in the wheelchair's name is Dina. Piper tells her that's a pretty name. She continues and tells her, you know, I could tell you a lot of things that would scare you, Dina. I could tell you that I'm going to make you my prison bitch. I could tell you that I'm going to make you my house mouse, that I will have sex with you even if we don't have an emotional connection. But why bother? You're too tough, right? Piper goes on to say, I know how easy it is to convince yourself that you're something that you're not. You know, you can do that on the outside. You can just keep moving, keep yourself so busy that you don't have to face who you really are. And then Piper gets right in Dina's face and says, but you're weak. Dina tells Piper, back the fuck off me, as she starts to roll away. Piper stops her and says, I'm like you, Dina. I'm weak too. I can't get through this without somebody to touch, without somebody to love. Is that because sex numbs the pain? I don't know. But I do know I was somebody before I came in here. I was somebody with a life that I chose for myself. And now it's just about getting through the day without crying. And I'm scared. I'm still scared. I'm scared that I'm not myself in here. And I'm scared that I am. Piper concludes with, other people aren't the scariest part of prison, Dina. It's coming face to face with who you really are. Because once you're behind these walls, there's nowhere to run. Even if you could run, the truth catches up with you in here, Dina. And it's the truth that's going to make you her bitch. And with that, Piper walks out of the bathroom. And Dina didn't cry, but you can see that she took it in. When Piper gets out of the bathroom, the entire Scared Straight group is standing there. And Poussey says, damn, you cold. After all that the Litchfield ladies have screamed in these girls' faces, it was what Piper said that was cold. So Poussey says, damn, you cold. And Piper says, bitches gots to learn. Back in the storage closet, we see Mendez putting on rubber gloves. And all that I'm going to say about this scene is that he is trying to make it look like Tricia unalived herself. And I really hate that. And while I understand from his point of view, he's trying to cover his own ass, I hate everything about this. I hate that she's overdosed. I hate that he's trying to make it seem like she took her own life. I hate that she's in prison for petty theft and now she's lost her life. I hate all of it. It's just all so heartbreaking. Elsewhere in the prison, we see Piper walking with purpose until she walks past Tiffany on the stairs. Piper says to Tiffany, I think there's a soul in the bathroom that needs saving. And Tiffany's like, constipation? Piper says, no, this girl needs a miracle, and walks off. And Tiffany looks like, wow, I guess it's my honor and my duty to go help this girl. Let me go see what's going on. That brings us back to the Scared Straight group, and CO Bell is asking the girls, so what have we learned today? And the girls say in unison, don't go to prison. CO Bell says, that's right. As they're having their little end of visit chat outside the bathrooms, Tiffany scoots on by to find out who needs saving in there. When Tiffany gets into the bathroom and sees that the person who needs saving is in a wheelchair, she's got a look on her face that says, wow, well, this is a challenge. The next thing that we see, the Scared Straight group is being walked out and they hear somebody screaming from behind them, leave me alone. Bennett runs back into the ladies' room to find the wheelchair turned over, Dina on the floor with Tiffany on top of her, laying hands, talking about, sweet Lord, work through me, make her walk again. Bennett tries to yank Tiffany off of Dina, but it's not happening, so he sprays her in the face with pepper spray, which leads Tiffany to say, Lord, they're blinding me. I am your martyr. Outside of the bathroom, Piper walks up to see if the ticking time bomb named Tiffany that she set off actually exploded, and it did. She sees CO Bell talking on the walkie saying that there's an unruly inmate restrained and in need of escort to psych. So apparently, because Piper put a battery in Tiffany's back, using her faith against her, she sort of incepted Tiffany to go and do this to Dina. So if you ask me, Tiffany being sent to psych is Piper's fault. And I don't think that we've heard too much about psych as of yet, but trust me, that's not someplace that you want to be. But we'll get there. CO Bell continues over the walkie to tell the other guards that they are ending the tour and bringing the Scared Straight kids back up to the front entrance. But that's when CO Fisher tells her not to bring the kids down corridor B. CO Bell's like, what? Why? And the next thing that we see is CO Fisher and Caputo at the storage room door, and all we can see of Tricia is her feet hanging in the air. CO Fisher tells CO Bell, we have a situation down here too. So no, do not bring the kids down this way, please. And that's how they discovered that Tricia was gone. The next thing that we see is Red in her kitchen, taking a private moment to cry when Nicky comes in. Just like a mom who doesn't want her kids to see her crying, Red quickly wipes her tears, gathers herself, and opens the door to let Nicky in. Red says to Nicky, it's my fault. I turned her away. I didn't mean she was out forever. I just wanted to teach her a lesson. I thought she was stronger. Nicky says she was. This is not on you. She didn't hang herself. She OD'd. I saw her wobbling around the cafeteria this morning. To which Red says, so she killed herself in a different way. Damn, true. Sad truth, but true. Red still says, I'm the one responsible. That's when Nicky says, no, this isn't on you. It's on me. I'm the one who told Pornstash about Neptune. I'm the reason the drugs are still coming in. Red sits up, looking absolutely shocked and hurt at the same time, asking Nicky why. Nicky's like, I don't know. And she starts to get emotional, saying, I was just mad at you for always shitting on me. Red explains, I only sent Tricia to detox because I thought they would start an investigation to put an end to all of this. Nicky says, I didn't know that. You were right to not trust me. But Red says, Nicky, I trust you more than anyone, and I always have. Nicky's like, how? Did you not just hear me? I betrayed you. But Red says, I know, and that's why I trust you, because I know that you'll do whatever it takes to make things right for Tricia. Red goes on to say, I was stupid to think that this prison would do anything about this. Even if they saw Pornstash stuffing drugs down her throat, they would do anything to avoid a scandal. Red tells Nicky, it's up to us now. Nicky's like, what are you talking about? To which Red says, you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Mendez. I want that motherfucker taken out. And that leads us to our orange screen indicating the end of the episode. So Red has got her first guard enemy in her sights. And spoiler alert, Red means business when it comes to taking her guard ops down. So we shall see where this goes. This is definitely the beginning of some mess for Mendez. So we'll see. Stay tuned. So this episode was called Bora Bora Bora. But if I had to retitle this episode, I think I would call it Scared Straight, because that is what I immediately think of when I think of this episode. I think that the Scared Straight storyline was really good because it had some really funny moments as well as some really hard truths. That scene when Piper is talking to Dina is low-key really deep. I also thought it was really creative how they used that to tie in the Tiffany and her healing hands storyline. I thought it was a really interesting way for Piper to get back at Tiffany. Although I still think it was a little bit harsh because now Tiffany is in psych, but definitely creative. I know that a lot of us fans like Tricia and her storyline. And while I've always liked her, I've never really been too invested in her, probably because she's not here for very long. But I have to say that watching through this time, I can definitely see how heartbreaking her story really is. It just sucks. And she's not the only one. There are other people that are in here for dumb things and horrible things happen to them as a result. Tricia's the first one that this has happened to that we've seen. And while it's a heartbreaking story, I don't think it's a very uncommon story, unfortunately. But that being said, I'm glad they told it. This episode also had one of my favorite Janae scenes when Tiffany healed her knee. We also get to see Bennett find out that he's going to be a father in this episode, which I think is important to the story. And we get to see how Piper met Larry, which I think is good background info for the story. And it was very cute how they tied that into Polly's wedding day story. So again, IMDb gave this episode an 8.5, the highest score of the season so far. All in all, I'm going to give this episode an 8.2. Good episode, solid episode, some scenes that I really enjoyed, moved the story along, solid, 8.2. Don't forget to comment your favorite lines from the episode and let me know what your personal rating is for this week's episode. Mine again was an 8.2, but what do you guys think? I would love to hear yours. The next episode we will be rewatching is season 1, episode 11, titled Tall Men with Feelings. And if I had to rename this episode, I would call it The Interview, because that's what I remember most from that episode. It's the one where Larry has the NPR interview that goes prison viral. So I am looking forward to that. The IMDb episode synopsis for that episode says, grief looms over the prison as the inmates mourn a recent death. Dayanara, Nicky, and Red plot to end Mendez's career by tricking him into revealing his indiscretions. Larry gives a radio interview about Piper's experience in prison, and his comments cause conflict with some of Piper's closest allies. We will also be getting backstories from Piper and Alex next week. As a reminder, or in case you missed my Thanksgiving post with a holiday scheduling update, I will be shifting to an every other Tuesday podcast release schedule as we're heading into the holiday season. Don't worry, you guys. I am still all about back to Litchfield, but this slight change is going to help me find a better pod life balance as things start to get busier. I do have some fun content planned, though, for the quote-unquote off weeks, so please subscribe to my YouTube channel to keep an eye out for that. And to all my Patreon subscribers, my honorary producers, you guys will still get early access to the ad-free episodes as soon as they're ready, so no 2-week wait for you. Also, you guys can help to choose our YouTube content by letting your voice be heard on our favorite inmate poll over on Patreon. So don't forget to check that out. And as always, thanks for hanging with me in Yadda Space. See y'all next time. Just so you know, I've been having such a good time chit-chatting with you guys about Orange is the New Black. Self-promotion does not come easy, but I know it's a must to keep the podcast going. Every time you guys listen to the podcast, you like a post, you comment, or you share a post on social media, you're helping this little podcast to grow, and I can't thank you enough for the love and support. If you've been hanging out in Yadda Space for a while now and you're enjoying the Back to Litchfield podcast, please consider leaving the podcast a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. It actually helps more fans to find us and then join us in the rewatch fun. Also, if you're able and want to go the extra mile, please consider checking out our Patreon. Joining the Prison Moms tier helps to literally keep the lights on for this little one-lady show, and it gives you early ad-free episodes, access to our exclusive Back to Litchfield chat right on Patreon, and honorary producer credits for the podcast, where you can be listed in the show notes for every episode that you help produce. You can use your real name, a handle, or you can opt out if you'd like to keep it Litchfield low-key. At any rate, you can find all of our podcast links on our Linktree. The address is linktree/Yadda Space. That's linktr.ee/Yadda Space with 2 E's. And be sure to follow us on your favorite social media apps. We are on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and now Blue Sky. Please follow those accounts for bonus content from the show, as well as updates about the podcast. And if ever you're searching for the pod, remember, it's just like the theme song says, Yadda Space with 2 E's. Thanks again for your continued support. It means so, so very much. I'll catch up with y'all next time here at Yadda Space.
Welcome friends to Yadda Space. I'm Yadda here, let's set the pace. This is a rewatch podcast, so let's begin. Orange is the new black is where we dive in. Tasty's wisdom sets the tone. Jose's heart feels like home. Nicky's got that quick one fire. Morello's love of love lifts us higher.